I say that to say all of this. The spiritual component is one of the bigger aspects of all of this, like you're talking about, Byron.
Yeah.
It is an evil, it's like the worst of everything. It's how you murder a child without killing them. They die every single day of their life when you sexually exploit them. And when if you have children of your own, or you just love children, meaning in the right way and the God's way and God's love, they're so precious. And you ask yourself, why would somebody even go down that road? Why would somebody think that it's okay to rape a child? I like working on the Gideon principle. I told the audience at the last thing we had in Yuba City over at Pastor Byron's church, I just said, look, God doesn't need a lot of people. He just needs the right people. And that's the way it is. And if you look at the way God has always manifested himself, it's always been through the few. It's kind of like the few, the proud, the Marines.
Yeah.
I think the Marines are God's chosen guys, man, to be honest with you. And again, this number, it's pretty close, but I know it fluctuates. 438,000 American children missing. And then with the Biden administration opening up the border, now we had another 500,000, according to Tom Homan, that have gone missing. These children, the UACs, undocumented alien children, as you know, came through. And it was, let me tell you what, it was all by design. And we know that now, and people are going to hang from the gallows. If 47 has anything to do with it. It's not only involved in child crimes against children, but treason on a huge level, because they're basically in bed with the cartel and other people. And we're gradually finding them, and there's a lot of good NGOs that are pitching in to help with that as well. But you had companies like MVM, which had a CIA connection, and children were taken from the border to MVM and held, and then redistributed not only across America, but they were distributed, get this, over to Europe.
Yeah.
And I know this because I spoke to contractors that worked for MVM, and then you had Catholic Charities that got billions of dollars, and they redistributed to across America, sometimes to MS-13, gangs, pedophiles, and oftentimes things like 26 kids being sent to one sponsor. He has a sentencing on August 2025. It means he's gone unimpeded for 7 years to continue this. They did a raid on his company, which is Dell Records, in 2022. Now, here we know we have a known cartel member running unimpeded for 7 years after he pled guilty, to these crimes. How is that under the Biden administration? But here's the big one, and this is the question I have for everybody. I have a picture of Nancy Pelosi and Lucille Roble Allard, who was the California 40th District Representative, standing right next to Angel Devaya in Washington, D.C. Nancy and Lucille, you want to explain to us why you're standing next to a known cartel member? But I think, and this is a call to action for all the veterans. I think somebody told me we have, and you may know this, brother, instead of me, I thought they said we have 50 million veterans in the United States.
Let's go.
I give a call to action, and I don't care how old you are as a veteran.
Yeah.
I would say if you love this country and you love children in America, I'd say you got a new operation, a new mission to go for. 50 million operators need to be in this war right now in our country to save the children of America, and they're more than qualified to do it. Whether you're still alive as a Korean vet, a Vietnam vet, Iraqi vet, Desert Storm vet, Afghanistan vet, special operations guy, whatever it means, you all have an ability that is above the average American citizen and above most law enforcement entities in America.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.
It's always an honor to have you. Thank you for being here with me, Baz. It's we go back a little ways now. I think we've been hanging for a little bit off and on here.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, it's been good. It's a blessing to have you in our life. You're like family to us. So I think you always know that.
Yep, and likewise, same, man. You and Tina need anything, you already know I'm up the street. And one of the reasons I absolutely love you is I remember when we first came in contact, and I remember just thinking, regardless of all the cool guy stuff and your background, I just remember being like, what a man of God, and I don't really have that, that's a spirit that's a spirit that walks with you, that is a fragrance. It's something that people feel and recognize. And I remember recognizing that in you and being so just refreshed. And it makes you feel safe and edified, So, I want the listeners to know, that's how I see it. That's been my experience with you, and it really is an honor, sir.
Yeah, thanks, man. That's kind.
No,
Yeah.
that's truth, you know how we are, two veterans, very much kindness usually going on. You got to dig deep to get anyways. But yeah, so, for those of you who don't know, that don't know you, would you mind just running through the cool guy stuff, the background, the stuff that they'd want to know about your tactical background, and then we'll get into more operational stuff and it's kind of what's going on in the world with regards to children being victimized.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. Well, my name's Byron Rodgers. Oh, wait, that's you. Sorry. Okay.
Right.
When you want to be really cool, you got to be Byron Rodgers. Is what I'm
saying. No, I look up to you.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. I'm a Citadel graduate, former captain, United States Marine Corps. Did a little bit of the initial counterterrorism stuff in the development of the program for the Marine Corps after we got hit in Beirut and lost 223, I think, from a bombing there, and was recruited in the CIA in 1985. I ended up in Ground Branch, Special Operations Group, SOD or SOGs, and stayed there working ground and maritime until about 1996. In 1996, I jumped ship and started the Association for the Recovery of Children, which, as you know, is a 501c3 former intelligence, military, and law enforcement officers that are dedicated to the recovery of missing, exploited, and sex trafficked American children. And of course, we do that at no cost to the custodial guardians, and of course, no paycheck in our pocket. So we do it because it's the right thing to do, because God called us to do it. And so that's kept us busy all the way till today, like all day long. So anyway, that's a little bit about it. Tactically, as you know, most of the stuff in the agency, I'm not at liberty to talk about. But I can tell you this, that my career in the clandestine service was saturated with some of the most amazing mentors and warfighters and heroes. And one of those actually being my own father, who I had no idea that he had ties to the agency back in Vietnam until most recently. It's always the way, your dad's got 4 Bronze Stars and all this stuff and all these accommodations and Thai Supreme Command badge, and which is equivalent to their Medal of Honor, I guess. And you're going, I don't understand what this stuff is about until someone comes up to you at the funeral and goes, hey, guess what? I rendezvoused with your father at the last Rodgers sugar mill before he went in with his team and got Che Guevara. It's like, what? So there's been a long history of stuff in my family, and so by God's grace, it would make a lot of sense why He led me in the path of righteousness and the path of adventure. With all of these other mentors in the CIA that taught me to be a really good Cold Warrior, because that was a period from 85 to 96, and a very practical person when it came to applying our skills and being very quiet about those things. It's not like today. Like today, someone does something, they shoot Osama bin Laden and they write a book and go, look at me. I'm going to get a movie. That's not the generation I came from. So anyway, thank you for asking.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you guys, if you haven't, you guys should go and train. If you have a heart for trying to figure out something to do when it comes to fighting the human trafficking epidemic in the world, I highly recommend you guys go and train with Baz and Tina. I've trained with them, went to their course. Great tradecraft, great to learn about the capabilities and things that are out there. Great to find out where you fit into the strategy of fighting against these things. I think one of the greatest portions was just the education about, what's going on with the gangs and the trafficking industry, and maybe what part of the fight, whether, it is, I know everyone wants to be operational, but even the aftercare and the psychology behind the things that are happening. Super good first training, or even, one of the trainings you should put in your pipeline if you're thinking about getting in that fight. I can vouch for that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That training is good in areas. It's starting to, the trafficking issue, child sex trafficking, particularly in America, it's growing exponentially, and it has quickly become in the multi-billion dollars market as children being a commodity for sale, with horrendous things being done to them, and cartel involvement and influential people that most everybody that's listening to us talk today have seen. They know who they are. I'm not at liberty to necessarily mention their names right now because there's investigations going on and there's people are keeping an eye on those people, but they are deeply, deeply involved in an industry of selling children for organ harvesting, adrenochrome, child sex, child porn, and doing money laundering and having multiple cutouts. I mean, the list goes on. I never thought there would come a time where the world of espionage would intersect with child sex trafficking, but Byron, that's the case now. Wow. And I used to think it was just, well, like even to this point when you took our training, we talked a lot about we talked about the cartel, but we thought the cartel was a kind of a separate entity. And we thought also that we were talking about mostly the gangs of the local perpetrator or the pedophile, or like, this past week in the state of Florida, with one of the operations they were doing. Yeah, they just evil people. But it is a very, very sophisticated industry now, and it is global. It brings in billions of dollars. And so then the cartel actually has alliances in the United States to help move that product or that commodity. And so 47 has got his hands full with not only cleaning up corruption in the country, but he's trying to run the country as the same way. But I know that's at the top of his list, and as it should be with Cash Patel and Bongino and Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem and all of the other places. I just spoke at CPAC this past week up in Washington, and I got a chance to listen to a lot of people talk about trafficking. I got to speak there also, as I mentioned. But it's interesting is that, and I hate to say it this way, but it's true, we have files on people in Washington in positions of influence that are all involved in child sex trafficking. And we don't turn those files over because we're so used to it getting squished or thrown out the door or never uncovered or whatever it may be. So I think,
lack of justice.
Lack of justice. So maybe the new FBI will go after those people. They know who they are as well. So, but it is a war. I think the Department of Defense may be sending a number of people down on the border now to work against the cartel. But we will see this become a war on our own borders with the trafficking of children as well. But it's a different AO. And I don't want warfighters out there to think, hey, I'm in this for me, because this isn't about us. It's about them. And so it's not Afghanistan. It's not Iraq. And the things that you have to understand at the 14,000 foot level are all those things that involve children. So as cool as most of our culture is, and they're pretty cool, and there's an application for that, they can't go with the thought in mind that I'm going to kick doors in and kill bad guys.
Right.
You'll get injured, or children will get injured, or whatever it may be. They need to be well trained up.
You'll get arrested. I mean, if you go in there with a fleshly world, like earthly mindset, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna play into the devil's hand. Anytime you're coming from the human mind, you're doing math in a battle that's very much spiritual. And if you're not able to move that way, you're just gonna be the agent of Satan, not realizing it.
Absolutely. And there is a huge spiritual component. I was speaking recently. Oh, this was at CPAC. I told the audience there, I said, look, because the moderator asked me something about how our faith plays in rescuing children. And I said, God doesn't need your belief or your disbelief to exist. So don't be so foolish to think you're so high and mighty that you think he does. And the same thing with Satan. He doesn't need your belief or disbelief to exist either. There's a spiritual battle that goes on there. And the evil that does things to children, we know why it's done, because it hurts the heart of God. And that's what Satan goes after. He didn't care. I mean, he does care. He wants to destroy everything that God's put in here. But to go after our children, man, that just rips the heart out of God, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and I see the fruitfulness of it just in everyday life with humans too, in terms of what trauma does to the human psyche and what it does to like creating openings for the demonic to operate in people's lives. Like maybe we've been doing a lot in the realms of spiritual warfare, and one of the number one ways that people end up dealing with oppression and harassment from the dark side is unforgiveness, deep-seated unforgiveness. And then there's a generational component, which like science is starting to catch up with. They're like, well, first thing they ask you go to the doctor is, what medical issues do you have in your past? First thing they ask you when you go to the psychologist is, do you have any mental illness that runs in the family? Well, trauma is the same way. It moves through. It gets locked in your genes. It gets locked in the spirit of a person. It gets locked in the bloodlines. And so, you can see how, many times when you catch these guys, you find out that they were molested as children when it comes to the pedophiles as well. And so there's like an iniquity momentum that can carry generations even.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell, it's interesting you brought that up, because I do get approached by a number of people that ask me, and this is my challenge with my relationship with God, and not in the fact that I'm challenged because of who God is, but
right.
When it comes to forgiveness, and I told I believe with all my heart there's a reason why God said it's better that a millstone be put around a man's neck and him thrown in the ocean and drowned than to ever harm one of these little kids. I think that's how God feels about it, and I think the Hebrew translation for that is "you die." So, it's for me, I don't have any forgiveness or any mercy for that. And I believe the death penalty is what you deserve if you rape a child. Now, a lot of people say, well, what about he couldn't help himself, or she couldn't help herself because they were molested? Look, my grandfather, my step grandfather was a horrible alcoholic. Okay. Yeah. But that's no excuse for me being an alcoholic.
For adults.
And so I'm an adult, and I can make a different choice and make a difference. And so, if you're going to go down that road and you're going to hurt the most precious, then guess what? There's a little fire and brimstone waiting for you. While I would like, it's so funny because I've been called, and I've been called the patron saint of missing kids. But I got to tell you what, I don't have any. I'm not very saintly when it comes to how I feel about pedophiles. To be honest with you, I'm right up there with, hanging with a short rope from a big tree, kind of thing. So I think that's the only way we're going to deter things. I don't think we're ever going to. I don't think we're ever going to stop child sex trafficking in this world. I think that's God's job when He comes back. But we can take a big bite out of it. And to say this. I say that to say all of this. The spiritual component is one of the bigger aspects of all of this, like you're talking about, Byron.
Yeah,
it is an evil that it's like the worst of everything. It's how you murder a child without killing them. They die every single day of their life when you sexually exploit them, and when if you have children of your own, or you just love children, meaning in the right way and the God's way and God's love, they're so precious. You ask yourself, why would somebody even go down that road? Why would somebody think that it's okay to rape a child? And that's what it is. It's paid child rape, and sometimes it's not even paid. They just kidnap a kid and they just do it.
Yeah.
So,
and the other thing that, even without the money exchange, it's still happening in homes all over the world. Even at the familial level right now, the industry gets some daylight, but there's just And the one thing that I tell civilians when they kind of are like, how could someone do this? I'm like, you got to understand, me and you, we've seen it, but they're still trying to make sense of it. Evil does not make sense. Like, if you're not evil, there's no understanding. When you run into pure, real evil, it's
Yeah.
absolutely senseless. It's absolutely, and honestly, and it's for God to deal with. The only thing I know to do with it is to eradicate it, and it's for God to deal with because
Yeah.
it is black. And yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Um, can we go a little? How do you see? I want to go a little bit more like deeper into the spiritual aspect of it. How do you see God in your work? Maybe even, the demonic. Do you run into the whole, we hear about the occult and the Luciferian stuff. Do you run into that stuff? Do you see that stuff out there in the wild? I know everything comes out of the spirit realm, in terms of what's controlling us as men of God, is the spirit of God, and what's controlling the other side of humanity. But what would you say about the deeper underpinnings of this? It seems like this battle seems like the most righteous battle that exists. How would you approach that question in terms of the spiritual landscape when you're doing your work?
Yeah. Well, first place we were called to it by God. And I think that you cannot come to this battle with any ego in hand. You have to come as a warfighter with a ton of humility and realize that God's in control of the battle. He's the supreme commander, so to speak. And if you don't know the enemy, and both the physical and the spiritual enemy, and that's an interesting thing because you are fighting the spiritual and the physical.
Right.
Then you're going to get blindsided by one or the other. So, for example, if I was just a pastor and I was never a warfighter, and I decided I wanted to tackle this, I'm probably going to get sideswiped by the
Correct.
physical. And if I'm just a physical warfighter and I don't know anything about the spiritual, I'm going to go into it and I'm going to get sideswiped by the spiritual. So, the type of warfighter that has to go into this AO or area of operation has to have both. And they have to be Christians and they have to be believers, and they have to plead the blood of Jesus Christ, and they have to let God guide them. What God does for our operations is he removes the veil so that we can see where we need to go to rescue kids. But once he removes that veil, we're able to see with spiritual eyes. We're able to discern the evil. And so when we run our operations, every one of our Strike Force recovery team members who are believers, we spend time praying that God will help us see with more than our eyes and hear with more than our ears in the spiritual realm, because it is the most demonic of all demons, or the most demonic of all evil
Principalities, or yeah.
platform principalities or whatever that we run into, because they fight so hard to allow Satan to have his way with these children via evil people. So in our operations, God always shows up. We got some of the best that go out there and get under the radar and go save kids. But every single operation for the last 34 years, Byron, has operated this way. We do everything by the book. I mean, picture perfect. And at the end, right when we get really close to finding the kid, God takes all our options away.
I
Every
love it
single time.
because it's going to
Every
be
single
by
time.
faith, it's
Yeah.
going to be his way. I love it.
I know. And it was so
Yep.
surprising the first time.
Mhm.
Now, when it happens, everybody goes, I think this is where
Slow
you're supposed to
Tuesday.
pray.
Yep.
But he does this
Wow.
because it allows him to show up and
Mhm.
do a miracle. And I tell people this, look, I know you guys think that we can do the invincible, but it's not us, it's God. And I could show you every single operation where God has showed up, and what we call now, we refer to them as Red Sea crossings. All
I
the
love
guys know it.
that.
They go, oh, it's another Red Sea crossing. And he does these most amazing things. And I'm glad he does, because it's kind of like the Gideon principle, which we're
Yeah.
learning to live by. Remember Gideon
Oh
had
yeah.
3,000. God
The
took
guy's
3,000 away,
drinking.
dropped him down to 300.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, oh man, we're outnumbered, but they had God with them, and they won. And so I like working on the Gideon principle. I told the audience at the last thing we had in Yuba City over at uh, Pastor Byron's church. I just said, look, God doesn't need a lot of people. He just needs the right people. And that's the way it is. And if you look at the way God has always manifested himself, it's always been through the few. It's kind of like the few, the proud, the Marines.
Yeah,
I think the Marines are God's chosen guys, man, to be honest with you.
I know
Our Army.
I know it's true.
Exactly. So,
Raw,
I got it right out of the Bible.
Let's go.
I know our Army buddies and Navy and Air Force buddies are probably screaming, we're going to get you now. But anyway.
They got the next podcast.
God only needs the few and the right people. And you don't want to overcrowd the battlefield. So I will tell everybody that with this war that goes on, it's the same thing. He doesn't need a lot of people. He just needs the right people. And so figuring out whether you're the right warfighter for this or not is it in itself is a test. It's a test of your spirituality, and it's a test of your training on every level, the spiritual level, and of course the physical level as well. I don't care how many physical wars you've fought and how much you've been downrange. If you don't understand this AO, you'll fail miserably at it. You will not mitigate the liability. And if you don't have a great relationship with God, you'll fail miserably also, because you will be shot with the arrows that Satan fires at you. And so for the spiritual side of training, I tell warfighters this: it's not good enough to just have a relationship with God, where every time you go before him, you ask him for things. God, can you do this? God, can you do this? In fact, in our community, it seems like we as believers, every time we go before God, we're asking him for stuff, right? And so I remember when I was a young boy, and I just buried my dad yesterday. So, but I reminisce, and I remember standing as a little guy. I couldn't even see over the hood of the car while he'd be working on it, and just being in his presence it was so rewarding,
Yeah.
And that's what God wants with us. And I wasn't asking for stuff. And we all have people in our lives. We have people that are in our lives that never ask a thing of us.
Yeah.
And then you got people that show up all the time and they're always asking stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And I think, well, how does God feel about this? So I tell the warfighters that are going to get in this battle, I go, you know what? Do what David did. Do what Solomon did. Do what Abraham did. Go and just sit quietly in front of God. Go to the Holy of Holies and just be there. And don't ask him for a thing. Just sit in his presence and let him saturate you with the Holy Spirit. And then you will be empowered to do great things.
Yes.
But let me tell you what, brother, that's difficult for a lot of people to just go and sit before God. Yeah. They get bored, they get tired. They're like, why am I sitting here? Their mind goes someplace else. But that is where we get all of our power, I think.
No, 100% it is, man. I always tell the guys in our Man of Peace Bible Fellowship is like, hey, proximity gives you power. You need things you have no idea you need. Just being with the Father, like especially when sometimes you try to have your quiet time and you don't know what to say. It's, well, Holy Spirit, teach me how to pray. Help me with what I need to say. And so, and I really believe what you're saying is just so awesome. The right heart posture is, all right, Father, I just want to worship you. I'm just so thankful. I never thought I was just a chubby little dyslexic kid from the Bahamas. I had no idea I'd be sitting here. Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't even know how I was going to get lunch half the time, and you just sit there and you think about all the stuff he's done and how far he's brought you and the things that should have killed you. And you just, and that'll get your heart going, man. And I don't care if you say another word to me right now. I just want you to know, Father, that wasn't in vain. I'll do my best and thank you, and you just, and because you have a heavenly Father, and what an honor to have that spirit of adoption and access and these things, so I love what you're saying, and I know it's the truth. And the other thing too is, it being such an intense spiritually saturated environment where the demonic's going to be super active. You got blood sacrifices, you have deep levels of evil happening, making sure that you're covered going into these things, that you have your own house as swept and as in order as possible. We all need grace, of course, but like these are massive considerations you might not hear out there on pop culture, watching something on Instagram about just wanting to get in the fight because you're a veteran, making sure you have your house in order, because you're going to be dealing with spirits that are masters at exploiting human weakness, and so I think what you said there is very important. And the Holy Ghost is going to be the one that helps you navigate your internal landscape and make sure that you're guarded, as well as the external landscape, and gives you the information when to zig, when to zag. Yeah, that's massive. Such wisdom,
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing too, brother, we have to hold our fellow warriors to task, meaning you can't serve two masters. And I'm seeing a culture of war fighters that are coming out of Afghanistan and Iraq and places where they're calling themselves believers, and yet everything that comes out of their mouth is just the opposite. The Bible says you can judge a tree by the fruit it bears, right?
Yes,
that's
sir.
right. So I think that we as believers owe it not to pass judgment, but to just at least those who call themselves God's warriors to say, this is what God's warriors would do. This is because God said it was supposed to be this way. And your mouth, or your actions are not consistent with what God would really want. So you need to put that in check, so to speak. And I hear all kinds of excuses. Well, I've been downrange so much, and God still loves me even. I'm not saying God didn't love you. Obviously, He loves you. He's taken you off the earth already,
right,
for some reason. But we owe it to ourselves to not serve two masters.
100%.
You cannot serve the world and act like the world
100%.
And talk like the world.
Yep.
And have attitudes like the world.
Yep.
And read pornography like the world. And treat people bad like the world, and then tell people you're a believer, because it's not correct. And it'll lead a lot of people that are seeking God in the wrong direction, thinking, oh, that's what I have. It's a watered down version of what Jesus requires of us. And so I, like the guys on our teams, they know how I am about this. I don't put up with it. I do my best to set the example when it comes to the way we live our lives, and we honor God with the way we live our lives. We honor, even beyond that, our brothers in war, in combat, that have died in combat for this country, even our founding fathers. We owe them the honor of being righteous. And how do we honor them? We honor them with the way we live our lives.
Yep.
Because they set the examples. They honored those people that fought for freedom with the way they lived their lives. And if you don't believe it, then get into understand more about our history, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and all, how they lived their lives. It doesn't mean we're perfect, and we're never going to be perfect until we leave here, but
there are standards.
Pretty good close, and there are standards. That's right.
Yes.
And we have to hold to them,
I love that you said that. Yeah. I love that you said that. I mean, there's, for me, and one of the reasons that I have always approached talking about Christ with such trepidation, having this size of platform, is because, I never want to misrepresent him. The amount of people that are out there with like church hurt and all this stuff, because humans' natural inclination is to look at other humans to try to understand God, which is backwards. But still, if you have Christ's name on your lips, people are going to be watching you. And we judge, but we don't condemn. By your fruit, you shall know them. You got pears, homie. That's a pear tree. I see a pear come out of there, and there's a verse in James, I believe it's like in James 3, it's like, if a man can't control his tongue, his religion is garbage. There's these words that, like, there's standards, and far be it from me, and any of us to misrepresent. We're not perfect, but just I really love that you mentioned that, because there's a commingling there. And what it also tells me when I'm interacting with people, and this is just full disclosure, all you guys, you got to understand, as an employer, as a team leader, and all the different hats that I have to wear and the teams that I have to make successful, people, the way I interact with people, when I look at you, I see your standards. When I listen to you, I see your standards. When I look at you relationally, the way you do one thing's the way you do all the things. And so if I see a high degree of fleshly behavior and worldly values inside you, I know that the spirit is not abiding, is not dominant in that space. And so that's a consideration as I interact with you. And it's also telling me the degree that you're going to be accurate when it comes to moving by the Spirit as well. I may not say anything because I'm going to be praying for you, praying for me. I need Jesus too. And we're going to figure out how to get downrange. But just understand that especially your tongue is a barometer, your heart posture and how you process information and the way people interact with you. It's a barometer, and it tells you how close to the spirit or the flesh you really are. These are the tools, y'all. This is good stuff. What would you say about, one of the questions is just like, where are they getting all these kids for this industry? Any intel, any ideas about that? That are worth mentioning?
I know these numbers fluctuate, Byron, depending on who you're talking to. But prior to last year, we had a close to, and again, this number it's pretty close, but I know it fluctuates. 438,000 American children missing, and then with the Biden administration opening up the border, now we had another 500,000, according to Tom Homan, that have gone missing. These children, the UACs, undocumented alien children, as you know, came through. And it was, let me tell you what, it was all by design. And we know that now. And people are going to hang from the gallows. 47 has anything to do with it. It's not only involved in child crimes against children, but treason on a huge level, because they're basically in bed with the cartel and other people. And
I've been down. I was down there running ops, watching the black buses. I saw military age males and kids. That's what I saw. We were down there running ops, and I saw military age males and kids and black buses, unmarked buses, picking guys up and driving them all over the place. Very few females, actually. So so stay frosty with regards to the fact that you guys, we don't know who's in the country, but then also, I seen what you're talking about firsthand.
Yeah, well, it's a national security issue too,
100%.
Because the same logistical mechanism that moves kids across America that we're not seeing is the same mechanism that's moving terrorists, weapons, nuclear weapons, whatever it may be, drugs across there. So there are enough people on the payroll, so to speak, in the country that facilitate all of this. And you're exactly right. You got to know what to look for with it. But we don't know where. If we're looking at the 400 some thousand plus the 500 UACs, we don't know where they all are right now. Tom Homan this past week said they've managed to find 10,000 of them. 10,000.
Drop in the bucket.
Drop in the bucket, right? So. And so we know that they went into child pornography. We know that organ harvesting, adrenochrome, child sex slavery, child labor, sex, just regular, forced labor, so to speak. And we're gradually finding them. And there's a lot of good NGOs that are pitching in to help with that as well. But you had companies like MVM, which had a CIA connection. And children were taken from the border to MVM and held, and then redistributed not only across America, but they were distributed, get this, over to Europe.
Yeah.
And I know this because I spoke to contractors that worked for MVM. And then you had Catholic Charities that got billions of dollars, and they redistributed to across America, sometimes to MS-13, gangs, pedophiles, and oftentimes things like 26 kids being sent to one sponsor. And most of the time, these weren't family members, as the Biden administration was telling everybody. They were people that these kids didn't even know. So, and the Biden administration, in order to cover up the whereabouts of the kids, get this, they stopped doing DNA checks at the border, fingerprinting, right?
Facts.
So why would you do that if you had intentions of being able to find children later? They didn't, because they wanted these children to be sold. And so the question is, where did all that money go? Follow the money, you find the crime.
100%.
And so we've got our hands full, because one of the things that we have to look at also is that the number of illegal immigrants, if we're talking just outside of children, just the fact that we have illegal immigrants here, they don't know anything about our country. They don't know the history of our country. They don't have a sense of nationalism. They're not going to grow up to support this country, unless you collect them all up and put them in a camp and teach them the Constitution and educate them about the history of the country. They're never going to be U.S. Americans. And so by design, by global design, same as communist design or socialist design, they were put here to basically tear up the fabric of our country.
Yep.
Because the more people you can put in a country that don't know anything about its history, the more people you can have to literally make the country become something else other than what it was based on in its history, so to speak. So that's all by design. And so when I hear people talking about, oh, like, how can you do this? This is so funny. How can you ship illegal aliens out of the country back to their across the border and or whatever? It's like, look at those people and go, okay, I got a deal for you. For every 8 illegal aliens I have, I'm going to give them to your care and your house, and your job for the next 20 years is to feed them, clothe them, and pay for their education. Are you ready to do this? Guess what? Everybody starts backing out. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. So it's that too, in a sense, has a demonic twinge to it, because the Biden administration, and we know this, and we can say it with the evidence we have, was in business with the cartel. Members of the Biden administration were in business with the cartel. I have a picture. Did you get that picture I sent you?
I don't think so.
Of Nancy Pelosi with the cartel?
No. Oh, send it. I'll put it in the episode.
I'll speak to it now since it's appropriate. But and then you just put it up. You get the picture. But so when we're talking about people about being in business with the cartel and the cartel being involved in child sex trafficking, they say, well, who are the influencers here? So there was a guy named Angel Davila, Villa, and in 2018, he was in violation of the Kingpin Act, doing business with known narcotics and traffickers in the cartel. And he pled guilty in March of 2025. Okay. But he hasn't spent one day in prison. And he's still pasting on Facebook, and he lives in California, down in Huntington Beach, okay? He has a sentencing on August 2025. It means he's gone unimpeded for 7 years to continue this. They did a raid on his company, which is Dell Records, in 2022. Now, here we know we have a known cartel member running unimpeded for 7 years after he pled guilty, okay, to these crimes. How is that under the Biden administration? But here's the big one, and this is the question I have for everybody. I have a picture of Nancy Pelosi and Lucille Roble Allard, who was the California 40th District Representative, standing right next to Angel Davila in Washington, D.C. Nancy and Lucille, you want to explain to us why you're standing next to a known cartel member? And I think Congress needs to ask that question as well. I think the FBI needs to ask that question well. And people will go, well, how did you get that information? Because it came through official channels after it got blockaded by Obama's administration because they didn't want anybody to know. So when you're looking at the level of corruption that's allowed all this to happen, why don't we start and pull on that thread and find out where it takes us there? And the next time when you get a chance on the court, put the picture up, you've got it, and just cut the subtitle at the bottom and show everybody what we're talking about. I mean, it's not AI. It's not made up. It's a real picture. And I need somebody like her. Why didn't she answer that question to the American people? Don't answer it to Congress, because there's a whole old boy network up there, okay? I don't want them to water it down. Why don't you tell the American people why you're in business or why you're taking a picture with a known cartel member?
Who should never have been, shouldn't be in the country, let alone not in prison, right?
There you go.
If there was a such thing as justice,
exactly,
here in America.
Yeah, and I don't even know this cartel member. I could care less about him. He is what he is.
Yeah.
But guess what? Nancy Pelosi, yeah, I care about her and her dealings with the devil, so to speak, and 100%. What she does to the American people. And also the 40th District Representative from California, Lucille Roble Allard. It's like, how about let's knock on their door and find out what crimes they've committed, not only against the country and treason, but how about crimes against children? Let's see if there's a link there.
Yeah, 100%. No, I love that accountability. We need it. And there's some light of day kind of in those realms, where we're at here now as a country, which is somewhat refreshing. What changes have you seen in the game really, since you started? You've been doing this almost as long as I've been alive, what are we seeing on the battlefield now that's maybe new and different, that the enemy's doing that's maybe most effective even?
Yeah, it's gotten more sophisticated, number one, because they've had an opportunity to put more people on the payroll inside the country in order to abuse children and traffic them. Number two, they've gotten a lot more aggressive with their abilities to protect their business entity, meaning they can have disposal programs so that people can't testify against them. They have a deeper satanic tie now, particularly with MS-13 involved and the gangs involved, whether it's the Bloods, Crips, and the list goes on and on and on. And it has become extremely difficult to figure out their breadcrumbs, so to speak, Byron. Like they came from one place, where did they go to the next? So we start looking and we try to take a historical view of the country and find out where they possibly could go. And so I don't generally like to speculate, so I won't. But what I will say is pharmaceutical companies have a history, and we know they've had people have testified this, of using orphans and children to experiment with. Okay, so we know how corrupt most pharmaceutical companies are now, and it's proven itself since COVID. Okay, it's a money business, and we know that, and they keep people sick, and we know that as well. So that's evil in itself. So why would not evil breed evil, and why would they not be suspect when it comes to holding children in places that we can't find so they can still use them as lab rats? I pretty much, as I said, I don't like to speculate, but based on my 33, 34 years of experience in the trenches and finding children, I'll bet you that's a place to look, to be honest with you. And that doesn't include all the millions of basements and houses around America,
Yeah.
We used to tell people we used to rescue kids from basements that have been there for 3 years, 4 years. And people are like, no, that doesn't happen here. It's like, yeah, it does happen. It happens every day. So while I would like to stumble on 500 kids sitting in a warehouse someplace, we haven't seen that happen yet, but I think they are very well distributed, to be honest with you.
Man.
Yeah.
So a lot of small unit operations, a lot of like 3 here, 1s here, 2s here. They've actually, probably because of the sophistication of the network that they've been using, I mean, with those black buses and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the enemies had time to, what was it? Was it Sun Tzu? Was one of the guys, Machiavelli, one of them, who said, warfare can only really be postponed to the advantage of the enemy. So it seems like we've had enough time to let this system and networks and safe houses on their side become mature. So it just makes the fight harder to be able to actually to save a lot of these kids. What do you, I would say, I guess I would, what do you think as far as the next frontier and where the fight's heading? Is it going to be, is the reality that we are facing, is that, because I'm noticing a lot of people are starting to get into this game. I'm noticing a lot of new companies. Feels like every operator I know, they're like, oh, we're starting a human trafficking thing. And honestly, you might have something to say about this. I'm a little concerned sometimes because I'm like, you understand, like, I mean, what's your digital hygiene like? What's your operational security on legal? Do you really understand the layers of the game? But it seems like there's all these small units that are starting. Where do you think the industry is going in terms of fighting against this thing? Is it going to be a bunch of small units fighting it in their own way, or do you think we need to unite in some way, unite the tribes?
Yeah, I think one of the things, well, you have to mitigate liability. You can't break laws. So that needs to be said right up front. And the only way you're going to do that is you're going to have to get well trained. And you went through our training. What it's like. We were intense 6 days of helping people mitigate that liability. But here's what we emphasize. Our Constitution says we the people, and the warfighters that want to get into this have to have that mindset. It's we the people, and they have to understand the laws that support their actions and who they are. For example, citizens arrest laws. Their law. It's written in. That's what we use, and you can use it depending on your state if a crime is being committed. Okay, so nobody can prevent you from doing that, but people are so afraid. Initially, I think that if you got a good community policing program where you've got operators or the community with the police go doing these operations, I think it's great, but I don't think it's necessary if you don't have that, to be honest with you, because we're still vetting law enforcement, and there's a lot of great law enforcement, but there's corrupt law enforcement too, and we keep running into that around the city. But this is happening in your community, so I think it's this way. To answer your question, it's a grassroots effort, as our country was founded with 3% of American colonists that kicked the British on. Yeah, exactly. And I think number two is you have to understand the law. Number three, you have to get trained up properly. And we'll train you. You know that. It'll be properly. So you can mitigate the liability. And I think what we need to start seeing is more NGOs that are ready to develop and go into the fight properly, that aren't waiting on the government to do it. Because here's the problem with our government. Every 4 years, there's a transition.
Yep.
And so children are going to suffer if there aren't good NGOs and good war fighters in the field continuing with the fight, so to speak. And so there'll be, and if another Biden administration gets in, well, guess what? You're going to be fighting on two sides.
Yep.
You're going to be, saving kids against bad guys and then fighting your own government. So you just have to be prepared for that. But the success, to some degree, in saving children in America is going to depend on we the people, not we the government, not we the police force, not we the military, whatever it may be. It's going to be we the people. And if you care about this issue and you care about the future of the country and the children that will become adults to lead this country, you'll get in the fight, so to speak. And I think, we have a history all the way back to the Alamo. We have a history of we the people getting in the fight, man.
Getting it done, getting it done.
I think the one thing that would scare the cartel and the gangs is the fact that all of a sudden you not only got the U.S. military down on the border, but you got NGOs on the border too. And they can cross-pollinate and coordinate with it, but they should have the right to do it. We worked on private ranches in Texas this past year.
Now, I remember I wanted to go down with you, but I was operational on something else. I was like, come on.
Because the rules of engagement were there, but we were protecting American citizens. We were protecting ranchers' land. We're trying to save children, and we're up against the cartel. So you don't have to go across the border to get involved in that. It's in our country already. It's all over. So I want to encourage the American people, and I think that's the next big footprint that we're going to have here in America when it comes to operational footprints.
Yeah.
I think the more war fighters or previous war fighters that get in the game and become trained up and get smart, I think they should go in the field, to be honest with you. Whether it's your 5-man team, whether it's your 50-man team, whatever it may be. And I think that they should remember that while awareness is a good thing, and it is, it doesn't bring a child home. Right. Until there are boots on the ground that go into the devo and grab the kid and bring him home, that child doesn't come home. So awareness has a place, but it doesn't save a life and everything. And we have, what's interesting, and this is where I used to get in trouble with law enforcement across America. They're like, well, we don't want a bunch of civilians running around here going to get in our way. Let me explain something right now. We got tier 1 operators and people that came out of Afghanistan that are far more effective than most police departments around the United States.
Yep. I wasn't going to say it, but let's go.
I'm saying it.
100%. Let's go.
And they're intimidated by it because you get someone like yourself that goes to small town USA, and the chief of police is going to be intimidated because you have more knowledge than he has.
And knowledge and
more capabilities in the whole thing. Or you get a former GRS guy, or you get somebody else that can outmove.
Really do some
and
things.
even outmove some of our troops today.
Yep.
When we talk about putting troops on the border, that doesn't mean we're going to put
The biggest,
tier
the
one
brightest, and the
operators on the
best.
border.
Yeah.
We put the average Joe, and the question is, did we vet them, and did they have downrange time, and
Yep.
can they fight? And most of the times,
And what generation of military did they grow up in? Did they grow up in this latest one with all the questions? Yeah, with all the
exactly.
or anyway.
Yeah, but I think, and this is a call to action for all the veterans. I think somebody told me we have, and you may know this, brother said to me, I thought they said we had 50 million veterans in the United States.
Let's go.
I would give a call to action, and I don't care how old you are as a veteran.
Yeah.
I would say if you love this country and you love children in America, I'd say you got a new operation, a new mission to go for. 50 million operators need to be in this war right now in our country to save the children of America, and they're more than qualified to do it. Whether you're still alive as a Korean vet, a Vietnam vet, Iraqi vet, Desert Storm vet, Afghanistan vet, special operations guy, whatever it means, you all have an ability that is above the average American citizen and above most law enforcement entities in America. I can tell you what this, and I'm really going to get in trouble for this.
Let's go. I'm with you.
Not the FBI that's being, cleaned up right now, but the old Bureau. We got operators that can outperform the FBI any time of the day, and the CIA and NSA and a lot of places, and they know it, and they're scared, and that's why a lot of them don't get hired. And the ones that get hired leave because there's still so much bureaucracy and red tape and corruption that they go, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up to go bring justice to criminals, and this is nothing but bureaucracy. This is like an extension, a tentacle from Washington, D.C. So this is why I say I think the next operational footprint is going to be NGOs that learn how to be good NGOs, and then they're going to go out and start running operations. We have strategic partners. We have you guys, and we have other strategic partners that we can call to the plate when we go on operations. But we have other people out there too, Byron, that are trying to get in the fight, so to speak, and they're in it for the wrong reason. They're going after government grant money. They're putting money in their pockets. They're making claims that they saved a lot of children. They haven't saved anybody. And they're guys that I go, get out of the way. Don't get in the AO with me. We're the longest running child rescue organization in America. And I tell you what,
let's go.
I can smell it when I'm up against people that aren't in it for the kids, they're in it for themselves, and so these are the people we don't need in the field.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. I absolutely love it because there's a lot of veterans out there that are like Ronin right now, and they because they lost that prior mission or that prior glory or whatever we had while we were in, we spend a lot of time spinning out and looking for a mission that's higher than ourselves, something we can pour ourselves and our skills into to train for that target, and there's no greater, more righteous mission than protecting children and bringing them back home, guys. And you have the skills. And I think the timing is super interesting because on the private side, as an NGO or even things you can do as a nonprofit or even as a company, as a corporate entity, you have longitude, you have latitude. Understand your legal parameters, your left, right, lateral limit, and get to freaking work. You know what I'm saying? And get to work. And you can do hood rat stuff with your friends. Hire, work with your guys. Get the platoon back together. Get the squad. The guys that are still worth a dang, get them together and get in the fight, man. And it's nothing but space, time, opportunity, and the grace of God. Nothing's stopping you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's small towns on the border. This down in Texas where there's like only 3 sheriffs in a town.
Yeah.
You show up with your team of 25 guys and you say, we're here to help. You know what? They're going to take your help.
Yep.
They're going to take your help. And the cartel is going to wish they hadn't come up against American patriots, to be honest with you.
Yep.
So there's good, sensible ways. Now, with all of that, you never want to have any fallout. So I'd like to repeat what you said. You got to know your legal parameters. You're not overstepping your bounds, but you have something. If you came out of Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever, and you're a warfighter, you have great courage. If you've been downrange, you've developed that. You have great instincts, hopefully, by then. And this gives you an advantage over people that are destroying children, so to speak, on this battlefield. And I think that needs to be done, And now what's going to happen is people are going to come in. Oh, you're just a bunch of vigilantes. Why don't you go look up the word vigilante and see what it actually means? You might. It's not really a bad mark on anybody, but I'll tell you, if you don't like that word, we're patriots and we're doing what's required of us in our country. We took an oath that says we defend the Constitution of the United States against enemies, foreign and domestic. And
Yeah.
part of that Constitution is for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do you think these kids get life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? No. Is it your job to defend it? It absolutely is. We have spent too much time overseas fighting and never fighting on our own front lines in our own country
100%.
here to save what we fought for. So we're over there with this idealistic pursuit that we're doing this to stop communism. We're doing this to stop terrorism. We're doing this to stop this. And we do it only to come back and realize it all snuck through our own back door.
Yep.
And because there's some political agenda or whatever tied to it. So how about for once in our lives, throw all that garbage out the window and wake up and realize the battleground is right here in America.
Yep.
Let's save our country. Let's have our sovereignty back,
100%. I love it. And I'm tired of hearing all these stories about 100 kids saved over in overseas here, 50 kids saved overseas here. And I'm like, I was sitting in a big war room for another major organization rescuing kids. And I think it was something like 30 some kids. And I was really happy for them. But I remember asking the question, I was like, why don't I ever hear about this stuff happening here in the U.S.? And they were just like, well, it's more complicated in the U.S. And then he was like, the feds, we just were told that it's under control here in the U.S. And I was like, really? So it's a whole different beast, but this is where the help is needed. And so this is, we need to clean our own house,
We do.
And I do believe God's going to judge us for what we do and what we don't do as a nation.
Absolutely. He will. He will.
Because he's righteous.
And it is. We have to clean up our own backyard. When Tim Ballard and those guys did The Sound of Freedom, I think that God used that to kind of get people's attention. But I always tell people, look, I heard so many people walking out of that movie going, wow, I didn't know that happened over there. And nobody knows that it's happening right here in our own country.
More than over
and
there.
I tell them, I go, what you saw there is here, and it's more sophisticated, and it's worse. And they're, no, that doesn't happen in America. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It sure does, and it has been for a long time. So wake up and smell the coffee because it's in our own backyard. And guess what? It's up to us to cut our own grass.
Yep.
Washington, it's not Washington's responsibility. Even though 47 is doing a great job, even though General Mike Flynn and those guys are doing great jobs, even though there are other people doing great jobs to protect our children and stuff like that, we, the people, have got to get involved. And you have to go with
100%.
the type of courage that says, you cannot stop us and you cannot prevent us from protecting our children, because every child in America needs to know that they can be safe.
Yep. It's honestly, and then I'll get into our last three questions. It's honestly like an insurgency, really. It's like the enemy is now dug into the general population, and then no one's wearing uniforms, but there's a war going on. And it's not until the civilian public chooses to not put up with the enemy anymore do you win an insurgency. And that's really essentially what we have. They're hiding among us. And if communities start being like, you know what? We're not. No, that third house on the corner, those are the guys. And go tell them, you guys need to get out of here, cease and desist, or we're going to burn the house to the ground. I don't want to get too crazy. But notionally burn the house to the ground. God bless them. Not. Anyways. So I love spending time with you. Hey, so last three questions, I guess. What's the hardest lesson you've learned during your time? And that's awesome that you guys are the longest standing NGO in this industry in the US. That's beautiful.
The hardest lesson I think I've learned is, oh man, I learn lessons all the time, brother.
Right.
That's a tough one.
How we live.
Yeah, I think the hardest lesson I learned is believing that the people, and I'm not picking on government, particularly this administration. I love this administration, but I will pick on other administrations, was believing that members of our leadership in the House and the Senate and in big three-letter agencies were beyond reproach, and they would never have their hands dirty, and that they were honest and patriotic and went out to do things that were righteous, and only to find out that wasn't the truth. It doesn't mean the organizations as a whole are bad, but the amount of people that I trusted in who were in positions of power were not who they said they were. And that is because they were not walking with God. And so, it's that's a hard lesson to learn, especially when you trust. And so what I realized is that, I didn't need them, that I have God on my side. And then so we're going to go forth and just do what God tells us to do.
Yep.
The Bible says, as in the days of Noah, God will be with us. And it said, and no man will be able to stand up against us with God on our side, basically. And I believe that. And so you have a global platform of evildoers that think they are bigger than God, and they think they're bigger than us. But what they do not realize, just as Pharaoh did not realize when Moses stepped in and said, "Let my people go," this is what God said. And Pharaoh basically probably laughed at him and said, "Right, yeah, I'll do that." Well, guess what? God had his way. And this is my message to all the global players that are hurting children. If you think that was bad against Moses, you wait until I step up to the plate and bring God with me. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to see fire from heaven, and you will not stop. You will not stop this storm that's coming with God and his miraculous angels and the war fighters that trust God that are going to get in this fight.
Yep.
And I know they're going to get in this fight. It is going to be your worst nightmare, and you're going to wish that you had never been born on this earth after doing what you do to children.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, man. I love that. We with the Man of Peace discipleship, we in a lot of our emblems, there's like an eagle and a lion, and it's kind of goes back to what you were talking about. I feel like the eagle represents operating by the Spirit. Like you have that overwatch, you have that. You can see everything you're getting. They call the eagles like the king of the sky, essentially, and then we talk about the lion, which is dominance on land. And so really what we're doing is we're creating a tribe of men that are learning how to walk as sons of God, not just mere men, and to be just as powerful and potent and violent and loving in the spirit by the power of Jesus Christ, and just as powerful and potent and tactically sound in the physical as well. And I see this new generation of men coming about, like veterans coming to me and being like, "Hey, I never really felt comfortable to talk about Jesus or spirituality until, we're talking amongst this group of guys where I respect these guys. Yeah, I listen, like I'm here for this type of Christianity." And so, and I love the things you're saying. It's just right in line. And you even talked about it at the beginning of this thing. Gentlemen, you have to have that proximity to the Father, have the power that he gives you through Jesus Christ, and be effective in this. If you don't have that spiritual pedigree, that relationship, that intimacy, you're not even operating as a fully formed, developed man yet.
No.
You're still operating from level 2 immaturity, no matter how physically whatever you are. And then also honoring what he's given you in the vessel and the capabilities you're here to execute on it with that vessel. So I love this stuff, man.
I will tell you this, Byron, also,
Yes,
I know some guys will be, there'll be a little conflict in their hearts because they, in our faith, we talk about forgiveness, and forgiveness is very important.
Yeah.
But let me assure them that from what I've studied, there's two types of people that make mistakes in the world. There's sinners and there's the wicked.
Yep.
So let me tell you about sinners. Sinners are people that make a mistake. They miss the mark.
Yep.
All of us. And and they ask for forgiveness and God forgives them. Let me tell you about the other group. They're called the wicked.
Yes.
The Bible says God hates the wicked.
Yep.
And he will destroy the wicked.
Yep.
And the wicked are the ones that are destroying our children. Okay.
Yes.
So when you go into this AO, go with a righteous mindset that says, you know what, I'm going after the wicked.
Yeah.
And this is what God said. And so guess what? The Bible says God hates the wicked. Guess what? I hate the wicked too. And so I don't have a problem. And I wrestled with that for a long time. It's like, Lord, I don't want to hate anybody, and I want to be forgiveness. But I got to tell you what, Byron, I asked God, I said, Lord, show me your heart.
Right.
Show me how you feel about this. And I'll tell you what, God's pissed off, man.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he's pissed off,
No.
and he hates the wicked. So it's like, Lord, all right, if you want to use me as your battle axe to go destroy the wicked, I'm going to give myself up to it. So, it's not revenge. It's not about revenge. It's not about, my rule. You never squeeze the trigger in anger.
Right.
That's not what it's about. It's about getting the job done. It's not an emotional issue. It's a spiritual issue. It's a logical issue, and it's about mission accomplishment. And the mission is to save our children.
100%. And we are here as God's agents. We hate what God hates. That's a righteous anger. And then the last question, the last question is, the world's ending in 30 seconds. What would you tell the world if you had 30 seconds left to tell them what's it all about? What would be your advice, sir?
You don't know Jesus, you got 30 seconds to get to know him.
You got 30 seconds to figure it out. I love it. My man. Oh, man. I love it, man.
That would be it,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. So that's a good question. I've never been asked that question before.
Yeah, that's good.
I think when our time comes, I was talking to my dad. We just, as I said, we buried him yesterday, and I'm trying to look on the lighter side of things because my heart's broken. I just haven't had a chance to get back in the Rockies and take the walk with God. But he's helped me hold the line here, and but I looked and. He loved God with all his heart. He was what we call Bellator Dia, God's great warrior.
Wow.
And there wasn't a person that he didn't share the gospel with in his career. He always looked for the opportunity. And yet he was a strong war fighter and accomplished everything, probably accomplished more than most men would in 10 lifetimes. I think that God gives us as men, and particularly as war fighters, a huge spirit of adventure and courage and tells us to go forth. And I think we should exercise that, but we exercise it in a righteous manner, and we exercise it with God's permission.
Absolutely.
And everything. And I think if we do that, by the time God calls us home, I think we'll stand before him and he'll say, "Job well done, my good and faithful servant." And let me tell you what, I don't need streets of gold. I don't need a great reward. But get a little bit of time to sit and ask God questions. The only question I would say is, Lord, would you do me one favor? Would you let me stand next to my dad on the front line of the last great battle in eternity?
Yeah.
To charge in to Satan's forces, and destroy him. And that's all I would ask for, to be one of those warriors on that front line to lead that charge. That is a blaze of glory.
Sure is.
Yeah.
That sure is.
Yeah.
Oh man, what an awesome ending to this fantastic visualization, man. That's good. It's gonna happen too. It is gonna happen.
Will.
Heck yeah, brother. Well, where can people find you? We'll have it in the show notes, of course, but what's the links?
Yeah, you can find us on recoveryofchildren.org is our website. recoveryofchildren.com is our website for our training schedule that we have to train up people like we were talking about, and we really do. We invite the war fighters that want to get in this. Come let us train you. Look, we're the gold standard. I'm not bragging if said by other people. You took it. You took it when we did it in 3 days, right? That was a bone crusher. Now we're 6 days. And then, of course, we're on Association for the Recovery of Children on Instagram and Facebook. And so you can find us there. And then if you're looking for me and you don't find me, it's because we're downrange somewhere trying to save some kids. And if you call and I don't answer, it's because I'm in the field. I'm not trying to blow you off. It's just that, where comms are down, and that's where they're going to stay until after the mission. So I think everybody should understand that. And if you can't find me then contact Byron, and he'll be able to send a carrier pigeon out with a message, and I'll get back to you.
100%. And then also, you guys, if you're listening to this and maybe you're not, one of the tip of the spear types, realize you can still have an impact in this battle. Give to these organizations that are doing things. Make sure you vet them and all those different things. But find an organization like ARC, like Bazzel Baz, or find an operation to support. I can vouch for Baz and his character, and we've been out on operation together. But there are other ways to fight this, even from your home. have an impact on the battlefield by, funding an operation. Come on, you want to sleep good at night, so, but also be prudent, because some of these operations are not what they seem, so
right.
Pray about it. And, like I said, you have me vouching for these guys. Keep that in mind when you fire off those rounds, you squeeze off those rounds. It's an honor. All right. Well, God bless Semper Fi.
God bless you, man. Semper Fi, buddy.
Yes,
Thank you so much. It's always a blessing, and God bless. And you tell your family we love them, and I'll look forward to finding you face to face here soon. Okay.
Yes, sir. Whenever you're ready, man. We're up the street. God bless.
All right, God bless, man.
Take care.
Boom. What's up, guys? So check it out. Podcast, all the free content, all the things are supported by Patreon. So if you're listening to any of these episodes and it's a blessing to you, it's helping you in life, we now have our Patreon platform up. It's also a really cool place where I consolidate all my content, and so you actually get to see everything, because the algorithms, for whatever reason, don't always show you everything. But anyways, if you want to support the podcast, this stuff's not free. Getting these videos edited, published, paying people to do all this stuff, syndication strategy, putting it all out, it ain't free. But it's an honor to do so, and I believe it's my work, and it's what God wants me to do. So if you guys want to join forces and help support that work, I want to invite you to check in the show notes, join us on Patreon. The whole give a cup of coffee. For what you pay for a cup of coffee, you can really help me out quite a bit, actually getting this thing going, keeping this thing going. All right. God bless. Semper Fi. Thank you for being here. We love you guys. Boom. When it comes to the technology you use to protect your home, there's nothing better than Deep Sentinel. AI-driven, human-monitored technology that will keep you and your family safe for the same price you're paying for whatever Ring doorbell system you have. Check out Deep Sentinel. It's such an honor to join forces with these guys. They should be in every single house in the world. Get real-time Overwatch for you and your loved ones. And for 10% off, depending on when you're watching this, don't forget to use code Byron at checkout.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.